Welcome to The Last Track, where we help people showcase the last track of their life story in their final wishes. I am your host, Brian Norris, the co-owner of Bateman Funeral Home in Newport, Oregon. Just like a song can bring you back to a day, a time, and a memory, so too can a well-planned service. As we get more global and our families are spread out all across the United States, as we're flying all over the United States, and as we might even be flying all over the world with the cremated remains of a loved one, can we do that? We get those questions all the time here. We're kind of a retirement area and a destination for vacations, and sometimes the unfortunate thing happens and people pass away while they're on vacation. So we get lots of those kinds of questions. Is, can you take an urn on an airplane? The simple answer is yes. The difficult answer is you need to be aware of how to get an urn on an airplane. You know, in the past, people were able to just put an urn and they stuck it in their baggage. They checked their baggage. It went into the belly of the plane. They got the baggage back, and they went to the cemetery. That started changing here in the last few years. And we now have TSA that's involved, and we have security checkpoints, and we've had a lot of things take place in this world to where bags get x-rayed and bags get looked at, and dogs will check for explosive devices and that kind of thing. So here's a few questions. And can you carry it onto the plane, maybe into just on your carry-on luggage? And yes, you can. But again, there's some things we want to talk about. If you're staying within the United States, that's one question. If you're going to be going internationally, oh boy, that's a whole nother question, because you need to start getting a consulate involved, and you got to make sure that the death certificate exactly matches the birth certificate. And you can get some special transportation paper to go with that. And sometimes you need to even translate the cremation authorization and the death certificate and a number of other paperwork, especially like if there's a non-communicable disease statement or a certificate of cremation that's involved in that as well. So each airline has some of their own unique rules and regulations. So my first advice is check with your airline and ask them about their requirements. Most likely, if you're buying an urn and it's a beautiful brass urn, gorgeous, and it's going to look beautiful at the service. But if you're taking an urn back home to have a service, I would highly recommend that this brass urn does not get filled. If you're going to buy it at the location and carry it home and transport it home, this should stay in a box, and it should be shipped back to the home, and then the remains placed in it later when you get home. A couple reasons for that, especially when you go into scanning as you go through. If you're taking it in your bags or if you're putting it in as a carry-on, it's going to need to be scanned. And if it leaves an opaque image, they most likely won't allow it. But even if you left it open and not sealed, and they wanted to open it up, they're not going to open it up because respect for the person that's passed away that's in it. They're just not going to do it. Even if they bring a bomb sniffing dog or something over and look at it, they're not going to, it's likely not going to allow it. It needs to be in a scannable plastic container or cardboard. The remains are placed inside here, and then this doesn't even really get sealed unless you strap it with tape around here. And this can be scanned, and they can see that there's not any kind of explosives or anything in here, as well as what we do, and most places should be able to provide this for you. You should have a certificate of cremation, which says that the remains were placed in this container and cremated on a particular day and by whom, and under the direction of whom. so that way, if there are any questions, they can call, as well as a certificate letter of cremation, which also describes the same thing. It says when the person was cremated, where, and what type of tracking number or what number should be on the cremated remains. And you probably will have a death certificate with you as well. And in the state of Oregon, we have a tracking number that goes with everybody, as well as what goes on the death certificate. And so with those three things, you should be able to take a urn or cremated remains on an airline, on an airplane. But again, double check with your airline. Last thing you want to do is be a half an hour out for your airplane trip and you're sitting there with an urn and they're saying they're not going to allow you to take it. Sometimes if you've already got a person in a brass urn or something that can't be x-rayed, you might consider at the United States Postal Service, they will ship it priority express with stickers on it saying cremated remains. It's trackable and it has to be signed. You can ship it from point A to point B, and then you can fly on the plane. And that might be, so if you already have somebody in a nice fancy urn, then that might be your choice, the best choice. Otherwise, you're going to have to get that urn opened and put into a plastic or an X-rayable type of urn so that it can go through the X-ray machine and it can be clearly seen that they're cremated remains and there's a certificate of cremation with it. And then it will be easily passed along either in your baggage or on your carry-on. And then you just carry it on the plane and then you just debark with it and everything's just fine. If you're going internationally, and we touched on this just briefly, you're going to want to work with your funeral home and your consulate. Let's just use Mexico for an example. Okay, I do a lot of work there. And the family comes in and I tell them, please come in with the certified birth certificate of their loved one. And the reason I do that is so I can make sure that the spelling is exactly the same, that the place of birth is exactly the same, that the spelling of their parents is exactly the same, because some of the names can be kind of challenging. All of that information has to be identical. I mean, completely identical. A lot of times people will say like, well, Bernie was the dad, well, no, maybe his name is Bernard and it's spelled Benhard or something. Well, it has to be the exact same, because what happens is the government there will be looking to make sure that, number one, that these recorded as passed in that country, and number two, that is exactly the person that is coming into the country, and it needs to be translated. It needs to be a translation of a certificate of cremation that's done professionally and it's been stamped to be a certified copy by a notary. All those things need to be done before you would take those cremated remains onto the plane. There's also going to be some, as they're checking through customs, they're going to be looking at all that information. And you don't want any of that to be rejected halfway through the flight or partway through the flight. So those are things to keep in mind as you're looking at taking your loved one on an airplane back to their place of birth or to their final resting place. And if you've got questions, I highly recommend that you check with your funeral director. Double check the airlines and their rules and regulations. The majority of them are the same, but some of them may have little variations, and always check ahead of time before you board the plane or before you head to the airport that you've got everything, all your ducks in a row before you go to the airport. Hopefully that will answer your questions. Yes, you can take cremated remains on an airline. Double check with their rules and regulations first. Check with your funeral home to make sure that they can provide you with these letters and the certificate of cremation, and make sure that it's in a scannable container.
Every podcast we take a moment
and we take a moment to remember all the families that are experiencing a loss and to light a virtual candle in their memory. So let's take a moment and remember them. This has been The Last Track. I'm Brian Norris, and you can find out more information about Bateman Funeral Home at our website at batemanpacificview.com, or you can visit us on Facebook. If you have any feedback or any questions about today's episode, you can leave us some feedback on our Facebook page, or you can give us a call, 541-265-2751, or you can email us at info@batemanpacificview.com. We'd love to hear from you. Please share this with anybody that might be traveling and has questions about taking an urn on an airplane. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.